This week, let's take a closer look at RPX100 by Rollei. I wanted to do some more film comparisons to Tri-X like I began earlier in the year. But to keep things consistent, rather than do them every now and then, I went ahead and got 49 different film stocks, everything I could get in 35mm from B&H and Freestyle. So unless they were out of stock, I got a roll of it. Now, if this part of the video seems familiar, it's because I'm using this portion of the video for all 49 of them rather than record it 49 times. So if you want to skip ahead to the H&D curves or the prints, time codes are right over here. For those of you that haven't seen this part of the video before, here's what I've done. So I wanted to use each film with the exact same shot, which is a headshot of me with a Kodak Gray Card Plus, which happens to have a red, blue, and green patch, a cyan, magenta, yellow patch, and then a dark and a neutral flesh tone. Then, with those shots taken, I bracketed every shot in third of a stop so that we can make sure we have a negative of equal shadow density to the base target film of Tri-X. Now, the reason I use Tri-X is because it's just been around for a long time and it's a very popular film. So it's a good base film to compare everything to. Then, once everything was developed, which was developed in D-76 at stock for the manufacturer's recommended time, I printed everything on Ilford using the exact same aperture, contrast settings, developer, and everything. The only thing I changed was my exposure time, and that was to make sure that I compensated for any base fog variation from one film stock to another. Other than that, everything was left the same so that we can have a comparison of just the qualities of the film. Now, there's going to be some differences in contrast, especially on the high end, and that's because the manufacturers getting their development time may not have used the same target that Kodak used for Tri-X. And that's okay. We're not looking at the overall contrast for everything. What we're really looking at is grain characteristics, tonality, how the film treats the shadows versus the highlights, that sort of thing. And we're looking at spectral sensitivity, thus the Gray Card Plus, rather than just a regular Gray Card. So we're going to go ahead and look at H&D curves, which if you saw one of my earlier videos on sensitometry, I like to use pen and paper and make my graphs. However, my wife was really ready to make sure I was done with this project. So she put everything into a spreadsheet for you all. So even though I don't like them, I want to show them to you thanks to her. Then we're going to go ahead and look at the prints side by side with the same print made from Tri-X. And from there, you can decide if you like the film and if you want to go and use it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the curves and then we'll go to the prints. Here we see Tri-X in blue, Rollei RPX100 in red. Some of the Rollei films did not show very well curve shape relative to Tri-X. They were shouldering pretty severely. This film, on the other hand, a nice straight line portion. We have a little bit of a toe down at the bottom, typical, I think, of most black and white films. We're going to have that. Our Tri-X, or T-Max films rather, from Kodak are pretty much the only ones that didn't have that. So typical shadow separation here, I believe, is what we will see. But then the rest of it, nice, smooth, straight line with no shouldering. So I think we can just get our basic black and white expectations met here. All right, let's look at the prints and see what that looks like. Here we have our Rollei RPX100, our Tri-X 400, and we can see, unlike some of the lower speed Rollei films, we're actually getting a much better panchromatic response. I don't know if this has come out before or after the slower films, but they did not have a panchromatic response. I'll leave it at that, just in case of different release dates. Okay, aside from that, we are also getting a much better separation between our dark and mid-tones than some of the slower Rollei films. I don't know if this is going to hold true for the faster films because I'm filming these from slow to fast. Okay, now aside from that, we are getting a little bit higher contrast, is just slightly brighter here on the whites than over there, but I feel like we're also just getting lifted medium tones compared to the Tri-X because our mid-tones are a little bit different, even though our whites are getting much closer. Other than that, this is turning out to be a pretty good panchromatic film. Nice contrast, nice tones, I would say really the top half of the scale is just a little bit brighter. And that's more of a curve issue, as we saw just a few minutes ago, different curve. But let's get down a little closer and look at details and grain. So here in this shot, we can get a pretty good sense of the grain on the background. And it is, honestly, side by side, it looks almost identical to Tri-X in terms of grain size. So this did come out as a full 100 speed film. But I feel like the grain is about the same as Tri-X at a 400. I've mentioned this before, that could be due to Tri-X being technically a slower film with dyes that speed it up, and that's how Kodak is able to get such fine grain out of 400 speed. But that is technically unconfirmed, so may not be true. In either case, grain's not much different here. Now, sharpness, we can see the wisp hairs that we are getting nice sharp detail. The features on my face are a little blurry because my camera missed focus. We're going to see when we get to the collar that we do have sharp detail there. But the autofocus missed just a little bit and focused on more the edge of my ear than it did on my eyes. And here on the shaded side of my shoulder, we can see we are picking up the very fine detail of the silhouette edge of my shoulder and the fabric. So it is picking up nice, sharp, small detail. And we can get a good sense of the grain structure. Here on the lighted side, we are getting the collar of my shirt. We are getting the detail and the sharpness that we'd expect. It's not quite as sharp as far forward, but again, like I said, it focused a little bit further back than normal. I feel like up on the back edge of my neck where it meets the background is a little sharper than the foreground up on the front of my shirt. That's just a camera misfocus. I'm not going to hold that against the film by any means. All right, now here in the facial features, we are getting decent separation, but I would say it's more along the lines of what you would get with an Ilford film, where the specific highlights are not separating as well as with the Tri-X on the high end. So all the light grays, like along the bridge of my nose, this highlight here, and on my forehead here, on this film doesn't separate quite the same as the Tri-X from the shade on either side. So all of these seem very similar. All of these seem very similar. And then on the Tri-X, they separate a little bit more. That's more of a curve feature showing where the exposure is not creating as much density change with this film as the exposure on the Tri-X. So that again, is just curve feature. Now, we can't quite see the detail of the skin because of that camera misfocus, but based on what we could see down in the shirt, I would say this is getting just as sharp and decent resolution as any other film in this range, like FP4, Delta 100, and so forth. Overall, pretty good film. I would say better than some 100 speed films like FOMA and Kentmere, but no better or no worse than Delta or FP4 or even AGFA. So decent performance. and I would not hesitate to use this film in the future. Alright, that's going to do it for this one this week. Thank you for watching. If you would like to help support this channel so we can get more materials to do more videos, then go down to the Patreon link or the merchandise link in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.